share my Ricola with you. They're kind of old. All right, then I'm going to eat them all.
Calling to order the Albany Unified School District Board of Education regular meeting. May we have a roll call? Here.
Vice President Goss?
Here.
Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Hinckley?
Here.
Trustee Duran?
Here.
Student Board Member Weinstein is absent. And Student Board Member Mala.
Here.
Thank you. May we have the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Student Board Member Mala, would you read the AUSD mission and vision statement?
Yes.
And if you've still got any voice left, the Board of Education meeting norms, please.
Okay. The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student. Meeting norms. 1, maintain a focus on what is best for our students. 2, show respect, never dismiss or devalue others. 3, be willing to compromise. 4, disagree when necessary, agreeably. 5, make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their points of view. 6, participate by building on the thoughts of a fellow board member. 7, make a commitment to open communication and honesty, no surprises. 8, commit the time necessary to govern effectively. 9, be collaborative. 10, maintain confidentiality, which leads to the building of trust. 11, look upon history as lessons learned, focus on the present and the future.
Thank you. There was no action taken in closed session, which moves us to item F, approval of the agenda.
President Trutain, I'd like to make one adjustment to the agenda. I would like to pull item M10, the master contract between Albany Unified School District and ATX Learning. We found a contradiction in amount, and we would like to research that further. We know that we can bring this to the board on August 13th, as this is a school year contract.
Okay, thank you. Board, do you have any changes to the agenda to request? So with that, with the,
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the agenda with the change stated by Superintendent Williams.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that brings us to G, our special recognition of retiring Superintendent Williams. This is your very last board meeting.
We saw you.
And I see some old friends in the audience. Thank you for coming. I hope that some of you in the audience will step up to the podium and tell us a little bit about what your favorite things about Val. I want to mention that what I really admire about Superintendent Williams is her incredible energy. I have known you for 5 years since you first arrived, and I've worked with you more closely, certainly since I've been on the board. And really, it's only since I've been on the board that I've seen the kind of dynamo that you are. I have called you, late in the evening. I have called you in the early morning. I have called you on the weekend. And sometimes I ask, what you're doing. Did I interrupt you? And when I ask that, you are always working on district business. You have never once said, I was doing something, really fun and entertaining. It's always like, I was working on the job description, or I was doing the backup for the next meeting, And I think that what you've given our district has been extraordinary. What a quantity and quality of work that you have done here. I only hope that I have as much when it comes time for me to retire. The district got you a little something. So
Oh, my
can you meet me
God.
in front? Be able to read this. So this is a crystal plaque for Val, and it says, presented to Val Williams, may the blessings of good health, the joy of good friends, a loving family, and the contentment of a job well done fill your life with happiness. Best wishes from Albany Unified School District Board of Education, June 25th, 2019. This is only the first of several pictures because I want everybody. Thank you. Alan, Peter, Alan, Peter. Anybody like to say a few words? This is an opportunity.
Good evening, Albany School Board of Education. It is my honor and privilege to speak on behalf of Val Williams and her leadership. I'm Dr. Peter Parenti, and I earned that doctorate here working for you in Albany. I was the former Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, before that the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and before that the Principal of Albany Middle School. Val espouses what the literature might call distributed leadership. In other words, you just find good people and then you get out of their way. And because of that, the team members that I worked with, the TOSAs, the principals, for that work, Albany now has an African-American parent engagement team, equity-minded mathematics programs where students are not tracked at an early age, where they have opportunities to learn mathematics throughout their career, and an LCAP that's aligned to the strategic plan and the goals that the board set forth, and so many others. I could go on and on. I have a whole legal pad. But Val, you've really done an outstanding job here, finding good people, supporting them, and then getting out of their way. And so for that, I know Albany's a better place because of you. Thank you.
So I actually was not planning to speak, but I just wanted to, so my name is Alan Gard. I worked for Albany for about 4 years as the chief business official. As the first time in that position, working with Val has just been amazing. She's a great listener. She's able to really talk through, debate, challenge us, and ensure that the best decisions are made for the students of the district. And especially everything that Peter said about being able to move the district forward, ensuring that things are done in a very collaborative way so that there's a lot of buy-in and discussion, and the ability to make difficult decisions in impossible circumstances is something that I just admire of you. And so I just know that Albany is a better place because you've been the superintendent for the past 5 years. So I just want to commend you, and really wanted to make sure that I was here today for that.
Hi, Val. So I'm Alan Maris, a former board member, and I was on the board when Val Lurie was hired 5 years ago. It's a difficult job, and I really appreciate you lasting for 5 years. And you've heard, and people really appreciated the contributions that you made. I think one of the early ones I remember were you spending a lot of time in the classroom with students. And that's the heart and soul of our school, along with our teachers. So I appreciate your commitment to students and families. and the teachers in our district over 5 years. I also appreciate your commitment to the community and your participation in the Albany Triathlon. And I hope you'll return to Albany to participate in that triathlon. You do. Very good. Thank you.
Hi, Val. So Mary Delia from the Albany Y, and no retirement is complete without another T-shirt for your time off. This is an Albany Y T-shirt, and it actually is one of our special ones. It says "Ride your bike to the Y," and it says Albany on the back. So I know you can't have too many T-shirts, and we just want to thank you for your leadership and hope you have a wonderful, healthy, happy, and very long retirement. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right is the writing part of the Albany Tri.
Good evening, President Tutain, members of the Board of Education. I'm Peggy McQuaid, Vice Mayor of the City of Albany. The first time I met Val was at an Albany Education Foundation Scoops for Schools when she was first hired. In fact, I'm not even sure she was really on the payroll yet, but she was there. I knew then that she was a strong supporter of education and would be an active participant in her new community. Since that time, I've worked with Val as a fellow Rotarian, painting the playhouse at the Albany Children's Center, dedicating a tree at Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park, and ensuring the books that Albany Rotary donates to the school libraries that they actually get to their destinations. Val's a strong supporter both of the Albany community and broader school community. When the high school band performed in the park, Val was always there, as well as attending many other school activities. I don't think she ever missed the AEF Chocolate and Champagne Gala fundraiser. She was a frequent diner at Little Star on the first Monday of the month, which is another fundraising event. And to copy Alan, I believe she participated in every Albany Tri during her tenure here, biking, swimming, and running in support of Albany athletics. Val served on the board of the Albany Police Activities League, attending our bicycle rodeos, and always seeking to find other opportunities for APAL to serve the youth of our community. Val, your service to our community is appreciated and you will be missed. However, you know there will always be fundraising activities in Albany to support the schools and the community, and I certainly hope to see you at some of them. Thank you for all you have done for our community.
Hi. I just want to say thank you for your presence, because I noticed your presence when you entered and like your wing. Thank you for attending Latinx graduation all those years. I know it was in your list and you never wanted to miss one. So I really appreciate that. And also I think from what I get from you also was like, or what I remember is just your enthusiasm, and also, you know, like all this advice about health. And I remember your emails, like your first year emails, you had like a recipe and then also a health. And I think one of the most important advices that I got from you was for teachers was like, I think the most important thing is for the teacher to take care of yourself first, and then so you can work with the students. And that really stuck to me, and I really took that. I'm like, yeah, it's true. I should take care of myself first. So I'm still doing that. So I wish you the best of luck, and I'm really jealous because I want to retire too.
Go ahead, Board Member Clark.
Yeah,
You gotta go up to the podium.
I can go up to the podium. I don't care.
Up to you.
I'll stay here. I just want to thank Val for working so hard for the school district. Even though it's only been 2.5 years, it seems like we've been working together for about 10 years. And she's really dedicated to doing what she's been doing for the last few years in Albany. And I want to thank her for her dedication for education through all these years. Also, every time I asked her for information, either through an email or through a phone call, she was very, very thorough about getting me back the information. Sometimes I felt kind of bad because I wasn't sure if I was calling her on her own personal time. I know there was times where I called her on the weekends, and I actually remember calling her, I think last summer when I was at Disneyland. Something came up in an email. Did I call you on Mother's Day? I also called her one time when I was up in Bear Valley skiing. Something came up, and instead of just, ignoring the calls or whatever, she would always answer them, or she would get back to me as soon as she can. I really appreciated that, and I want to thank you for giving me your personal information. I'll try not to call you as much, but I hope that we can get together sometime and actually just hang out away from the whole school business and just get to know each other a little bit better, and thank you so much.
Good evening. My name's Patty Fujiwara. I'm the co-president of the Albany Teachers Association, and I just really wanted to thank Val for her openness working with us, with the teachers. She would meet with us once a month. We would have a roundtable meeting, and it was a great opportunity to really talk things out and hash things out, and really we all feeling like we were really in the loop. And I also want to echo that she always followed up when we had questions. We would hear from her the next day. And the last thing is she was really instrumental this year working with the East Bay Coalition for Education to work with Sacramento to increase funding for the schools. And so really appreciate that as well. So thank you so much for your dedication to education.
I'm not going to go to the podium. So the first time I sat down with Val, you may not even remember this, but Sasha Keller and I spent an hour in your office writing the school's, the district's safe haven policy for students, which seems particularly apt today, although school's out of session, so we can't be that haven. But it was a really impressive display of a clear understanding of how to protect our students. Marie was also there, and how to teach two people who knew a lot about organizing and nothing about policy, how to take our ideas and make it into something real that stays with the district. And that made a very big impression on me. It's part of why I'm sitting up here now. But I think that combination of expertise and policy and the ability to be very patient with people and say, I understand this is what you want to do. I'm going to walk you through how to do it, without making them feel like they don't know what they're doing, even though I now realize I had no idea what I was doing. So I really appreciate that approach to helping the district change and become a better district by listening to people and educating them and helping them to become advocates and knowledgeable about what they want to accomplish. So thank you. And I will echo Kim's comment about the energy level, because our first 4 board meetings at 1:30 in the morning, I would look over and you were still awake. I'm not sure I was, but I really appreciated your, sticking with us there. So I hope you get a lot more sleep in the future.
Val, the superintendency is probably one of the most challenging and most important positions ever. You touch the lives of students in ways you don't even realize, and touch the lives of the teachers and everybody else in the district. And always I could see you cared about kids. I mean, that's your passion. And there were some challenges, of course, that were very difficult challenges in the last couple of years. But at the same time, you're very resilient. You're very strong and are able to pull yourself through regardless of what it is. And that's another important characteristic that I think a superintendent really needs, and you certainly showed that. On the other end, too, as everyone has said, you work so hard, and that's obvious, and something that you should be very proud of in terms of how you've tried to move the district forward. Lastly, I would like to say that it's time for a new adventure, though, too, right? An opportunity for you just to indulge yourself, finally. That time comes around, too, in our lives, and I hope you have a wonderful adventure going forward, and that you'll think of us and let us know how things are going. Thank you so very much for all you've done.
Oh, well, I guess it's my turn. Everybody else talked. I mean, I could talk about all the good things that Val does for a long time. But I know there's somebody watching this on YouTube right now telling me not to go on and on and on, so I won't. I will make it very short, and I'll say that there are certain people that you meet, and when you meet those people, you realize that they are special people. And Val is one of those people where when you're having a conversation with her, she makes you feel like the things that you're saying are important, you know, like the things that you're saying matter. And for me personally, I've had conversations throughout my time on the board where sometimes I'm talking and people, they don't really think what I'm saying is important. But Val never makes you feel that way. And I think that that's a special thing. And it's one of the things that made you successful here in Albany. And I'm sure it's one of the things that will continue to bring you success as you move on in the things that you're doing. So enjoy your retirement. Don't change your number because the season is coming back around. And so I'll take an Uber out to, I forget the name of the place we were talking about, but I'll come watch the game with you.
Now, I'd love for everybody to come up. Oh, Val, you're going to say something?
No,
I just group picture.
No, I was going to say that I have friends who are actually taking bets on how long it's going to take me before I start crying. Right. So let's take the picture because I think I'm going to win the bet. The longer it takes before I do that. You want to do a picture?
Yeah. Okay. No one's going to be in the audience. Come on. This one I'm going to get in my hand. You ever do the site visit? I have to be in front. It's a short people. Come on. This is the one I'm going to hang up. Oh, now you're in the picture. Oh, no way.
And how was something crazy?
5 more years.
Now, students' comments. Oh, folks, Val, were you going to speak?
Yeah, I wanted student comments. The board student comments.
Okay, well, guys, now it's our recess time then.
Oh, we have
So I
recess
call
time.
a 10-minute recess.
All right.
We have bubbly water and bubbly apple juice back at the back. So everybody everyone can take a minute to.
Oh, nice.
To shake hands with Val and do best wishes.
Then I win the bet.
Yes, right.
guys. No, no.
45.
I've never seen so many contracts in the board packet.
There'll be 1-minute contracts. Okay. Okay, consent.
We'll let Brian slide in here. Reconvening, and what I'd like to do, here we go, okay, is move on to item I, the consent calendar. Would the board like to pull any item from consent? Are there any questions on consent? Then can I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that brings us up to board and superintendent reports.
Okay, thank you. For the notes, Julie, it says I consent calendar, and actually should be H consent calendar.
Thank you.
Okay, I will not cry. No, I really want to say thank you to the board. Both, I mean, not the past board's still not here, but I really want to thank you guys for taking the chance on me as your superintendent. I really am so happy to have ended my career here. I could not think of a better place to end my career. I think that we've got great teachers. I think of amazing students and student leaders. I could not ask for a better staff. I just could not. So I really want to say thank you. I will not say goodbye. Remember, aloha means till we meet again. But in Hawaiian, mahalo means thank you from my heart. And I will not be a stranger. I just leaving a big part of my heart here in Albany. And I will come back for the try. I'll be here for the Solano stroll. And I will come back for fundraisers. But you got to let me know when they are, because it won't be on my calendar anymore. So I do want to thank all of you very much. I think when it comes to superintendent and good board governance, this is a great team. And I think we've all worked together really well. And I do want to thank my staff. You know, Cheryl, Marie, I can't see you all here. But thank you guys all. You guys have really made this a wonderful journey for me. And I think it was us as a team that has done the best that we can for kids. So thank you very much. Okay.
And that brings us to board reports. Now that we're out of school, there's not that many events, but please go ahead, Board Member Clark.
Yeah, I just want to briefly state I, along with a lot of the other board members and staff, went to a lot of the graduations that were at the end of the school year. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to quite a few of them because my school year was already done. I went to the middle school graduation, the high school graduation, and the promotion for Ocean View and Marin, and they were all wonderful. They were put together very well. And the part that I liked about them the best is even from the elementary all the way up to the high school was the student speakers. It's hard, even as board members, speaking in front of a crowd, and I don't know if they practiced or not, but they all went up and they really impressed me, and I'm sure a lot of other people noticed that. So congratulations to all the staff who put everything together, to all of the graduates and the students who promoted, and it was just nice being out and be able to spend time with the community and the students.
Anyone else? I will also congratulate the schools on the fine graduations. I was at the middle school and the high school graduation. It was really an honor to be a part of the high school graduation, and I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I also wanted to just mention that on the last Wednesday of school, I was out on a street corner counting people going to our schools to see if we might need to change the position of our crossing guards. So I was there with a walk and roll to school representative, and we were counting parents and kids heading in both directions, either to ACC or to Cornell or over to the middle school. And after that, I had the chance to go to Jeff Castle's design class, who, unbeknownst to I think to anyone at the district office or to the board, he had given his students a project of redesigning our Jackson Street property to hold both the district office and at least as many students as it currently holds. And it was fascinating to see the students' designs. They both did a physical 3D model, and they had a computer model, and they had a vision statement about what they wanted to prioritize in their projects. For some of them, it was the view. For some of them, it was sustainability. One interesting group wanted to optimize relations with the neighbors. So they wanted the least offensive building possible to the neighbors. And I took pictures of all of those so that if it ever does come up, we can come back and see what the clever and creative ideas that those students came up with.
I know that it's the summer, and after this meeting, we won't be meeting for a while, so I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank again, Val. Thank you, for all of your work, and Jackie and Julie and the board members, and it's been great working with you guys. I think that July is much deserved break, so I hope you guys will take that time to recharge and spend time with your families and all that good stuff. And tomorrow's some time for you to relax a little bit, and to the parents in general, I know they might not be watching because they took the time off, but the job of a parent is not easy, and it is never ending. It's 365 days a year, and the district is what it is because of the involved parents that we have. So just wanted to, acknowledge them as well.
Thank you, Vice President Doss. And with that, we should move on to the student board members report.
So I don't have much since school has been out, but besides many students being promoted and graduating, one new thing happening this year is the Albany High School Library is letting students check out books over the summer. So they checked them out in the last week of school, and they're returning them the first week of school. So that's a new and exciting thing.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone here to address the board on matters not on the agenda?
Good evening. Neri Castillo McIntyre, father of India McIntyre, a first grader, or actually currently she's in the extended summer day program at Albany Children's Center. I apologize in advance for not attending the previous portion of the program. I would have loved to say a few words and thank you, Val, during the official part of it. I am not sorry that I came at the right time to eat your food, though, so thank you for feeding the hungry. And I wanted to thank Val and Cheryl, who is moving to a different opportunity, and also Diane Marie, who is not here. But obviously with change also comes opportunity, and I wanted to say that I'm looking forward to working with the new superintendent and also with Veronica Michaels, who we've already seen great signs that she is perfect for the role. And so my wife met with her about a week ago, Jean McIntyre. And they had a great conversation, and today she even checked in to see how India was doing in class. So off to a great start. So thank you. And thank you, by the way, Vice President Doss, for what you said. You reminded me a moment ago. The reason, by the way, that I came late is because my kids were in swim lesson at the Albany Aquatic Center. And you just reminded me a moment ago, as the sun is shining right on you, that when my kids were in the class, the sun was shining right on the water in the pool at Albany Aquatic Center. And it's a great reminder of the reason why we moved to Albany and why we lived here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo McIntyre. And that brings us to L, review and discussion. plan for a temporary drop-off pickup zone at Albany High School.
Thank you, President Trutane, members of the board. The reason I'm bringing this item as a review and discussion is to offer the public an opportunity to provide their input as well as the board. As you can see in the backup, we did schedule 2 neighborhood meetings at Albany High. Principal Alexa Ritchie and her staff actually went around the entire perimeter of the school into the neighborhood, and we're dropping off flyers. The first meeting, we had about 6 or 7 people in attendance. So I met with our pool director, Amanda Mandietta, and said, if you hold another meeting, then the pool committee can come and other members of the community can come. And so she put information out, and we had a second meeting, and about 8 people showed up, 2 of which had come to the first meeting. So one of the things that I said I really wanted to do was to offer a third opportunity if there's any member of the public that wanted to provide their input. Can you go to the schematic, please? So we need a temporary drop-off pickup zone for Albany High School, and right now on Key Route, there's a drop-off pickup zone, and you really can't change that area because there's sections that are red zoned as well as the space for the police officer. So the question was, were to have a temporary drop-off pickup zone on Masonic. I'm sorry, Portland, thank you, on Portland. And so some of the responses I got from folks were some wanted to move the parent drop-off pickup zone further, closer to Key Route in front of the sort of building west of the aquatic center. This would allow us to keep the handicap parking spaces there. And there were also questions that we had asked about, would you like the spaces to be parallel parking or diagonal parking? And believe it or not, it was about 50-50. Some people said keep it, some people said move it, some people said parallel, some people said keep it diagonal. However, everybody had a concern about the fact that we would have temporary housing there and how it would impact just traffic area, and really wanted us to look at it when we actually have kids go over to the new addition, that we look at school start times and parent drop-off pickup times. So I just wanted to provide an opportunity for folks to give additional input. We do need to take this to the Traffic and Safety Committee, and that would happen, I think they meet in July. The city goes dark in August. So I just want to give you guys the opportunity, and if any member of the public wanted to speak, to provide us with input.
Okay. Not seeing anyone approaching the podium, I'll open it up to the board for board comments. Okay, so that will go to the city traffic and safety in July, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that at a later date.
Okay.
And that,
I do have one question. Have you connected with the parents who are organizing the sort of park and drop option at initially at the middle school annex, but eventually at the high school?
We did not reach out to them specifically, but we can.
It may be good just before that Traffic and Safety Commission to get everyone on the same page about what pieces might go where. Okay.
I think that's a great idea, because I thought that the documents that I saw from the park and drop plan were excellent. And I believe that's coming from the Ocean View PTA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you email me with the contact? Okay.
And that brings us to M, review and action. And honestly, in 2.5 years, I've never seen so many contracts come before the board in one night. And it's, well, of course, it's not all contracts here. Our first item is the 2019-20 Local Control and Accountability Plan.
Thank you. I'll turn this over to Marie Williams, our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services.
Good evening, Superintendent Williams, Board President Trutane, board members, members of the community. The purpose of this item this evening is to approve the district's local control and accountability plan for the year 1920. Last year, at our last board meeting on June the 11th, we held a public hearing on the local control and accountability plan, and so tonight it's coming before you for your potential approval.
I know there were some board questions regarding the LCAP plan. In the interest of putting those into the public record, would any board member like to express those now?
Put those questions specifically?
Right, because I'm not sure the public understands that when the board receives the agenda packet, we read it, and then if we have questions, we email the district. And so we have an opportunity to sort of prepare the district personnel for things that are going to be asked in open session. And in order for, if we had a question, we feel like there's probably members of the community that might have the same question, and this is the way that the whole community can get those questions answered, is by having it in the videotape of our open session.
Is it okay if I go ahead and read them? I think I had 90% of the questions. So. The first one had to do with page 257. Given that the EL students had access to other instructional materials during the school year, is it that too much money is allocated for these materials and the money could be spent in another area of need for these students?
Yeah, so in our analysis of that particular action and service, we, I think, did recognize that the allocation of $46,000 was maybe too much, and so we did revise that allocation down for 1920 to approximately $20,000. And what we did with the remaining funds was reallocate them toward an action around supporting the district to reduce our rates of chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is our district's least well-performing indicator on the dashboard, I'll say that.
On page 257, the district allocated funds to retain clerical staff in the curriculum assessment and instruction department. This position was vacated in December and was not filled for the remainder of the school year due to the district's structural deficit. The direct impact to students was minimal, and the question was, will this clerical position be filled for 2019-20?
Yeah, so the response provided there was that at the December 17th board meeting, the board took action as part of the first interim financial report to approve the elimination of this position beginning in 1920 and moving forward. So this clerical position at the district's office will not be staffed moving forward, pending another decision by the board.
Okay, thank you. Page 271. When we say that 100% of the students have had access to a UC A through G requirements, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that students could enroll in any course they wanted? How many students needed support in those courses?
Yeah. So the first, to answer the first part, 100% of students had access means that I would say a vast majority of our courses at the high school are UC-CSU, so that's University of California, California State University approved. Can students enroll in any course they want? No, because there are prerequisites and also there are grade level requirements. The second question I think is a little more difficult to answer in terms of how many students needed support. And so I sort of wrestled a little bit with that answer because I think sort of one of the ways that we determine maybe most objectively in our own minds about whether or not students need support is by looking at their grades. But there are other maybe less measurable ways of determining when students need support. So I think part of the response was if parents make a request, or if students are making requests, or if counselors see that there's a need, and sort of that support could take a lot of different forms. And so I think what I would say to that is that it's sort of, the term support itself, I think maybe is a little bit more subjective, but I would love maybe to sort of drill down in that question a little bit more, Board Member Durant, to find out sort of how I might answer that question a little more completely for you. But I think what I indicated in the response is that if there was a desire on the part of the board, we could bring forward a grade mark distribution that shows the general performance of students in UC-CSU approved courses.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to comment that that's really important because we can use the word access and say, yes, it's accessible, but truly, in terms of students not only being able to select the course, but actually being successful in the course. And so what you're describing, I think, is really important in terms of what are we doing for those students as help is indicated.
And so maybe I would add a little to that answer and would say that classroom teachers throughout the course of the year are implementing formative and local assessments that are then providing them information in more real time maybe than a quarter grade or even a semester grade that would help them to determine if there was a need for support. Sometimes those formative assessments, though, are sort of administered right in the moment. And so, you know, we wouldn't always be able to sort of tally every time we measured and or sort of tally every time we provided an intervention, no matter how brief, based on maybe the results of a quick formative assessment like a, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, right on a whiteboard type of strategy.
Okay, thank you. On page 284, what actual services are planned so that the district goal of a 95% graduation rate is met in school year 2019-20? When will we shoot, and also when will we shoot for a higher goal?
So we'll shoot for a higher goal when we meet the goal of 95%, and I would say 95% is a high graduation rate. I didn't bring the responses I provided, so I'll try to remember what I wrote. And I think what I indicated there is that some strategies that you might use would include enrolling students in intervention courses, providing them access, let's say, to McGregor or credit recovery if they were in need of credits toward graduation, enrollment in intervention courses. I do know that at the high school they have expanded access to math intervention courses in particular. The other observation I think I noted there is that across the board districts in the state of California, because there's a different calculation method for the four-year cohort graduation rate, many districts did experience a decline in graduation rate. And so the guidance that we received from the state was not to compare sort of the most recent graduation rate with prior calculations because students who previously passed the California High School Proficiency Exam are no longer counted as graduates, and also students who earn a adult school diploma, as well as students who transition to the adult school, are no longer removed from the cohort, so those students would be identified as dropouts. And then the other note I think I put there was in terms of monitoring more consistently the students as they are entering and leaving the district. So a student might leave a district and go somewhere else, and if in the exchange the new district doesn't pick up that student in CalPADS, which is the statewide data management system, that student will be reflected for us as a dropout. So it's a technical piece, but it's one that we have to make sure that we're monitoring nonetheless.
Okay. And I guess my real concern there is if you say it's a high number of graduation rate, but if it's my child that's not meeting that graduation rate is one of the 3-4%ers, then I'm definitely concerned about that.
Absolutely.
Page 288, are teachers paid? Because I saw that there are so many different activities that you had itemized, some wonderful things for students happening, and I was wondering if the teachers are paid to sponsor the clubs and the extracurricular activities and how that's done.
So in addition to positions that are paid through a stipend per the teacher's contract, I do know that sites will make local decisions about authorizing adjunct duty and or paying teacher hourly for things like, let's say, I think at AMS operating the African American Student Mentoring Program, teachers are paid to facilitate that group, but that decision is made at the local site level.
Okay. Also, you had noted the numerous professional developments that have been happening now for a couple of years at least in the district with regards to including diversity. And so my question is, what measures are in place to evaluate the effectiveness of professional development in these areas of equity, inclusion, and social justice competencies?
And so I think I said many things, but ultimately, improvements in learning outcomes for students tells us whether or not the professional development was effective in the areas of equity, inclusion, and social justice.
On page 292, how will the LCAP address the issue of students? In particular, there was two that were noted, 2 or more races and Latinos who do not feel safe or very safe at school in grades 7 to 11. And even though the high group that felt the safest was Asian students, even 22% of Asian students in grade 7 do not feel safe. That's a lot of students, and it seems that we need to be more aggressive in addressing this issue, and so how are we doing that?
Yeah, so I think I did highlight for you some of the strategies that are being implemented at the middle school and at the high school around, at the middle school, in addition to the African American student mentoring, they are expanding to include Latino students next year. At both the middle school and the high school, they are having great conversations with their staffs about how to sort of revision their advisory period so that students feel a sense of connection throughout the year. And then also, I think the other comment I noted was that this data is taken from the California Healthy Kids Survey that was administered in 2017-18. We currently administer that survey every 2 years. There are districts that administer that survey every year, and so if that were an interest that we had, it's certainly a lot of work, but we surely could implement that survey more frequently since we are looking at that data, including it in our LCAP. Since the time that this survey was administered and the results were sent back to us at the high school, we have implemented a .2 Safe and Inclusive Schools coordinator. That position was in place for the first time this year, and that person facilitated a number of activities and events, including Challenge Day, including bringing speakers onto the campus that I believe were really very well received. And so we will be looking at then when we administer the California Healthy Kids Survey in 1920, we'll be looking to see how these data are changing in response to the interventions that we're putting into place.
And is that survey done in the spring or the fall or when?
Districts decide when to administer. I believe the last time it was administered for us was in the spring, I believe.
And since we will be writing a new LCAP, would it be better to do it in the fall or not necessarily to have that data?
That would be something that certainly we could explore. The data doesn't come back particularly quickly, so I don't know the timing of the data coming back to inform the development of the LCAP, but certainly if that were something that we had an interest in, we could look to administer that, maybe not in September, because there's a process to get the materials, but certainly that could be something that we would explore.
On page 311, do principals ever look at teacher lesson plans?
Yes, the response I provided was generally during the teacher observation cycle, teacher lesson plans are observed by principals.
And teacher observation cycle, is that every other year or every 3 years?
I don't know the answer to that question, so I will say every 2 years because
every 2 years.
Hattie and Terry are giving me 2 fingers.
Okay, very good. Page 315. For the AP exam, passage rates and employment and enrollment rates from 2015-2016 to 2019-20, goals have been lowered. Why is that?
So the baseline data for AP passage rates indicated that I think it was 86% of students, 86% of the exams taken earned a score of 3 or higher. And so our goal, as stated, indicates that at least 80% of exams taken will earn a score of 3 or higher. And so I think when we indicate the 80%, we're not setting that as a ceiling, but certainly saying that that would be sort of the minimum expectation. I think in the questions I noted that in at least 1 or 2 of the years since that baseline was set, we achieved a passage rate of, I think, 86% in 1 year and maybe 82 in the second year. But I think for us, sort of, we set that goal within a range. I think it's a balance when we're identifying these goals and thinking about how strategically we can meet these many goals that we set. Certainly we could put 100% for every one of them, and I think we could expect that we weren't maybe going to achieve 100% in all of them. And I think as we are moving forward with a new cycle of the LCAP, and today I was participating in a webinar that was addressing some changes to the template. Really, I think there's a need for us, for the board, and for us to think about how we'd like to prioritize these many actions and services, because there are many things that we are setting goals around. And I think aspirationally, we would hope that we could achieve all of these goals. And in reality, I think we want to think about how do we really prioritize what for us are the most important goals and what are the goals that would sort of be the highest leverage points that would then allow for other increases to happen.
That's a really key point, I think. On page 316, for 2018-19, do you have the percentage of African American and Latinos who were enrolled in AP coursework? How many completed the courses?
I have your answer here.
Thank you.
Because I can't expect you to remember all the data. During the 18-19 school year, 42% of Black African American students enrolled in at least one advanced placement course, and 42% of Hispanic and Latino students enrolled in at least one advanced placement course. So that's how many were enrolled. And the information regarding the course completion rates, we will know in the fall, because those grades were just given out recently.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's not even half of the students, though, of those cohorts or those groups. So that's an area of concern, I think, that has to be addressed sooner than later. Page 317, in 2018, 28% of 11th graders did not meet the ELA standards, and 38% did not meet math standards. What are we doing for those students that is different for this coming school year?
Yeah, so preliminarily, we have data for 2019 Smarter Balanced summative assessments, and in the areas of both mathematics and English for 11th graders, the percentages of students not meeting or exceeding standards has been reduced, I would say, significantly, by 9 percentage points in ELA, and then by 10 percentage points in mathematics, based on the assessments that students just completed in the spring. And I think two strategies that I noted that I think contributed to that and we would want to continue to implement were around increasing access to teacher tutoring at the high school. There had been some implementation of peer tutoring through the Flex program, and this year, in order to respond to concerns and needs around mathematics, Principal Ritchie expanded tutoring opportunities to involve teachers and found that to be very successful. And then the other was opening up access for specific math-based intervention courses, and so those are two strategies I think we would say led to these significant improvements in Smarter Balanced performance assessment, and we would continue with those in the coming school year, 1920.
Yeah, I think that's something very exciting and for us to celebrate. And I guess the ATA president, oh yeah, she's still here. Congratulations in terms of the teachers. Providing the services that enabled our students to be moving upwards. So that's very exciting. Page 323, what are the standard-based assessments based on units of study or curriculum, and are they ongoing throughout the year?
Yes. So I think that question was coming from information in the LCAP around intervention, using assessments to drive intervention that's provided. And so in addition to using Smarter Balanced summative assessment results, we also do implement local, so teacher-driven assessments. At K-5 elementary, we implement in mathematics and also in writing trimester assessments. Also this past year, we implemented implemented for the first time reading assessments as part of a comprehensive reading plan that was implemented for the first year. And so all of that information, particularly in terms of the local assessments, as teachers get that information, as specialists get that information, can make real-time decisions about what students should be moving in and out of support throughout the school year.
On page 324, the services, I just noted it was 1.2.2. And I had asked, are these services provided before after-school programs intervention, I believe, for the students?
Yeah, so the services will provide core sections of ELA and math at the secondary schools, and those sections are provided during the student day.
Okay.
Clementina, I wonder if maybe we should just be hitting the most important.
Sorry, I thought as a record you wanted them all. I know there's a lot. I asked lots of questions, yes. Do you want me to just skip over some of them?
Yeah, skip over some of them that are that are less important. But I think that I do think that this is very useful because I think that it sort of surfaces for the community the level of scrutiny that the board provides the items that are in the agenda packet, and that level of scrutiny is not always obvious during the meetings because of time constraints and and not knowing if our questions might be the same that the community might have. But this is regular practice for the board to ask detailed questions and to receive these answers, and those answers certainly inform us on our actions. And the LCAP is a very important document, and these are the fundamental drivers of what we are doing to improve education in Albany. And so this was an important exercise. I don't.
Just a couple more.
Yeah.
Page 366, question. I don't know if it was an activity or a service, at 3.1.1, what metrics will be used to determine if parent participation increases?
Yeah, so sort of beyond the obvious metric of, sort of tallying attendance at the meetings, I think in 2017-18 for the first time, we implemented the California Schools Parent Survey, which is a companion to the California Healthy Kids Survey, and I included, I think, in the responses just some overview slides, so you could sort of get a flavor of the kinds of questions that the survey asks, and I think as a practice moving forward, we should have some interest in continuing to implement that survey to get feedback from parents in sort of that formal way, because it can help us to inform not only the development of the local control and accountability plan, but also our local indicators as part of the school dashboard. But I think also in the same manner that ultimately outcomes for students who are traditionally and historically underserved being improved as a result of any of the actions that we are implementing are the true measure. That's why we're doing these things, to improve learning outcomes for marginalized students.
Okay, and the last question, on page 388, the action 2.7, please briefly describe the school-wide character education program that school counselors provide.
Yeah, so this section of the local control and accountability plan is around the district demonstrating that it has provided increased or improved services for unduplicated students. So students identified as English learners, economically disadvantaged, and foster youth. And a feature of the plan is that every year we are required to include the previous year's accountings of how we have provided expanded or enhanced services for unduplicated students. So that particular reference around school-wide programs appeared in the 2017-18 LCAP. So the short answer to that question is, I personally don't know what those services were because I didn't have this job in 17-18, but I did observe when I looked in 18-19, which was my first year of facilitating this process, and then in 19-20, that language has been removed. So I don't know what that referred to, unfortunately, but I did, we haven't continued to use that language, so I didn't do too much digging into what that was occurring in 1718. However, if you would like me to do that, I certainly could. But in the interests of time and with school being out, there probably wouldn't have been a feasible way to get you that information because counselors are gone till August.
Okay, thank you so very much for all the time
very
you
welcome.
take.
Of course.
To answer my questions. Even though I work with you on the LCAP, I still want to ask you these questions.
Well, and I think, if I might, just to President Trutane's point, I think as I was sort of thinking about sort of in general the nature of the questions, right, what I really appreciated was sort of the placing an emphasis on not just input, but also outcome. Right? So we're saying that we're doing these things, and so how are we measuring that, and what do we expect to be different, and what are we going to do differently? And so I really appreciate your keen eye, all of your keen eyes on that piece of it, because as I said, we could write 100% for all of these goals and say that we're going to do a lot of things and maybe not move the needle in the way that we want to. So I think really your questions really signify that this document really is more than an exercise in cutting and pasting or sort of setting goals that we sort of haven't really thought about how we plan to carry those out. And so I'm excited about that next year and moving forward.
Board Member Hinckley.
Just a small question about the strategy for addressing chronic absenteeism in particular.
Yeah, so our hope, pending your approval this evening of the local control and accountability plan, is to increase staffing, to increase attendance staffing. So we did scrape together dollars in the LCAP using supplemental funds to be able to either increase staffing that's currently already in place or to establish an FTE position. And really what we are hoping that position will do is sort of prioritize a group. So rather than sort of having this sort of broad approach that maybe might work or not work, sort of look at our data. What is it appearing to tell us are our greatest areas of need in terms of, is it at a particular site? Is it at a particular grade level? Is it a particular student group? And then really work with sort of the increased staffing to communicate with the parents, to really educate parents about the impacts of chronic absenteeism. I'll tell a quick story. I was meeting with our district English learner advisory committee. One of our student groups that has the highest rates of chronic absenteeism are English learners. And so I put this question to them in our DLAC committee meeting, and their response was really very interesting. A parent said, I'm a visiting professor, and so I'm bringing my children here for a very short period of time. And so, you know, as part of the experience of being here, we want to go to the Grand Canyon or we want to go to Disneyland. And those trips don't take 2 days. They take 2 days to get there, and they take a few days to be there, and then days to get back. And so that person also said we didn't have any idea that when we were making these decisions for our family, the impact that it's having overall on district data. So I think that education piece is really huge. And then I think sort of regularly communicating with the families and the students that we have targeted, and really sort of seeking to uncover what are the reasons for chronic absenteeism. Is it illness? Is it school aversion? Is it lack of engagement? Is it that you need outside resources in order to be able to be at school? And then to sort of match folks up with the resources that we need so that we can decrease our rates of chronic absenteeism and increase our attendance district-wide.
So I just have a follow-up question on that, which is, I understand we have a goal of addressing absenteeism to bump up our ADA, which is important. So that may be a reason to sort of pursue the traveling, visiting professor family. I guess my concern is more the child whose chronic absenteeism may be with us for a long time and is impacting that child's potential. So do you sort of differentiate in how you're going to allocate those resources so that we're sort of focusing on so that we're using some evaluation of what is the impact of this on the child's long-term educational outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I didn't mean to suggest in that anecdote that those were the families that we would sort of be targeting, because you know, that those practices might not change. And I think sort of first and foremost, our desire would be to intervene with students who their chronic absenteeism is having a negative impact on their being able to benefit from the education that we're providing in Albany. You know, there was much conversation also about families whose students perform highly and who make choices about being absent from school for other reasons that for them personally are also very valid. And so I think for us, having even just sort of an identified resource or person to sort of work with, to sort of sift through what are the buckets, what are the groups of students that are experiencing chronic absenteeism and what are the reasons. And then, you know, I certainly understand the financial impact, but I would say sort of my motivation and drive is not sort of chiefly to increase ADA, although I know that's important, but really who are the students that are not, achieving learning outcomes that we would want for them, and those would become the students that we would target first, certainly.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any other comments, or is it time to pass this local control and accountability plan?
I move that we pass Marie's plan, no, the LCAP plan for 2019-20 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I see that our item 2 is the federal addendum.
Yes. So the LCAP federal addendum is new this year, and the purpose of the federal addendum is for districts to identify how they will align their use of federal funds within the LCAP and with state funds. So earlier on the consent calendar, you approved the consolidated application for student programs, and as a district, we receive approximately $60,000, we receive approximately $200,000 in Title I funds, which is funding specifically for low-performing students. Title II is chiefly professional development. We receive an allocation of about $60,000 there. And then our third allocation is Title III, which are dollars that are allocated specifically to English learners. So as a district, we already allocate our federal funds and identify how we use those funds in the local control and accountability plan. The goal of the federal addendum is to replace the LEA plan, which in the first years of LCAP, districts were writing a local control and accountability plan as well as an LEA plan. And so the federal addendum seeks to sort of eliminate the need for a second plan, an LEA plan, but also pull in the requirements of Every Student Succeeds Act around speaking to how we will expend the dollars. So I am asking this evening for your approval of this plan, which it is necessary that the district approve the federal addendum before I'm able to certify the consolidated application in the state system, because I tried this evening and it wouldn't let me.
Does the board have any questions on the federal addendum? Can I have a motion?
I move we approve the federal addendum to the LCAP for 2019-20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that brings us to our 2019-20 budget adoption.
Thank you, President Trutane. I'm going to turn this over to our Chief Business Official, Jackie Kim.
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. This item is to adopt 19-20 proposed budget as it was presented at the last board meeting, June 11th. So the information is still the same. Nothing has been changed. It was as it was presented.
Okay. Board? Are there any questions?
I can ask some of the questions that were in the packet. So one of the things that we heard at the last meeting, which is also in this packet because it's part of the minutes from last time, is the statement by ATA about concerns about the general administration costs in the district still being above the state average. percentage, both in the past and possibly even going into 1920. So I think a couple of board members asked for some clarification about, given that we've made significant cuts of administrative staff, one, we asked just for some clarification about what those reductions are in terms of general administrative costs. And then I just have a comment about where we're at. So just as a reminder, for 1920, we've eliminated 3 positions at the general administration level: the Director of Student Services, because we combined student services with special education, 1 network administrator, Albany High School vice principal, and then downgraded the Director of Human Resources position. And this is in addition to some cuts that were made before 1920, including eliminating the maintenance and operations supervisor, which Jackie now performs much of that job, and eliminating the communications manager, all of which were part of the administrative percentage that shows up in the past when we were even above 7%. I think we have done, I'm happy that we've made some significant progress in bringing us closer to an average, a state average of general administrative costs. I will say, after looking at the percentage across districts across the state, one challenge that we have as a small district is that the cost of, for example, a superintendent, there's 1 in every district. It's spread over a different number of students in every district. So in Los Angeles, you have 1 superintendent supported by tens of thousands of students. And in Albany, we don't have that. So I think I want to be clear as a board that I think we have a shared mission to keep cuts away from students, but I think we're also balancing the fact that it takes a certain amount of resources to run a district. And we're a small district, and we only have so many students and schools to spread that across. So I think that, I think I take very seriously the ATA's position that we, as a board, need to continue to keep cuts away from the classroom. But I also don't want us as a board, or myself as a board member, to sort of pick an arbitrary number and try to comply with that. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say as clarification for that. And then as far as the budget overall, I just asked a couple of clarifications, some of which you mentioned already, which is this doesn't represent any change in strategy from what was presented June 11th. There's still no certainty about how the remaining one position will be reduced. So the presentation from last time with the $220,000 of estimated reductions that are needed, we still have only a partial solution for that. Before we approve the budget, I guess I'd like to have at least a description from the superintendent of what you feel you're sort of handing off to the next superintendent in terms of implementing that reduction. Because we can't make a decision tonight about what that looks like. We're voting on a budget and then handing off responsibility for that. So I'd like to hear something about what that
something hopeful.
Yes.
I really want to have staff look at enrollment over the summer, because it's still June and we do get enrollments in July. I have received, since we put the information out to Realm, I think I got 5 inquiries. And some were in the grade level that were not increasing inter-district transfers, but I said, you know what, apply anyway, because you never know, right? You never know who's coming and going, and if you can put 1 more student in. So I think those are coming in. We don't know what's going to happen over the summer. I don't see so far any, sharp declines in enrollment because of temporary housing. So that seems to be steady. The new superintendent will probably need to make a final decision, and I think he could probably make a more informed decision probably right around the end of July, early August. So that would be the one piece. The only other way that we would potentially not have to look at that one position is if Jackie finds out from the state that we get additional monies. If that, then we could look at offsetting some of those things. But in terms of what the next superintendent's going to need to do is, I would think, work with Veronica carefully and with Kristen to look at what the enrollment numbers are and then make a decision then.
So if, worst case scenario, we still have to cut that whole $220,000, what would be the process for the new superintendent to work with ATA, with principals to implement that? What does that look like?
I would say for starters that the new superintendent would need to work with the principals and look at their master schedules at the secondary level first. I really think they should look at the master schedules and see what the enrollment is, if it's possible to tighten that up and to look at if there's a portion of an FTE or a full FTE that needs to be looked at. I really think that we should look at secondary prior to looking at elementary. We already have, because of the SERP, we were able to save some positions. I really do not want to have to raise class size at elementary any more than is absolutely necessary. So I would say my advice would be to preserve elementary class size as much as possible.
I want to add that I thought that the governor's budget had released a little bit more special education funding, and if we do qualify for that, then that would free up a little bit more funds in our general fund. Jackie, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, that is correct. And I am meeting with our SERPA director next week. So we will find more about it next week. And I can give board an update.
Okay, thank you. I think we would love to have that update, and because I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's going to be good news. I also wanted to comment on what Board Member Hinckley was talking about in terms of the general administration expenses. I do want to clarify that the district office staff consists of the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the director of both student services and special education, because that's been combined, chief business official, director of technology, and a personnel coordinator. So we have 6 positions in general admin. And I was in the office yesterday, and I was able to glance at the actual line-by-line items in that general admin budget line, and I was surprised to see some legal expenses. And I believe that those legal expenses would be more appropriately characterized elsewhere in the budget, and so I would like to ask our CBO to look carefully at the general administration. I mean, of course, the books have closed on the data that we're actually seeing now that's online that was used to generate this eddata.org. So what we heard about was previous year's budget, so it isn't up to date. But I think especially that we need to dive a little bit deeper and make sure that what's being characterized as general admin are actually administration expenses. Can our CBO comment on if that's going to be possible?
Sure. So first of all, so this general administration cost is divided by big, maybe 3 big groups. One is the board and superintendent cost. The other one is other general administration cost and centralized data processing. And since it is a general administration cost, this cost does not include director of student services, director of student or assistant superintendent. So this is really our general administration cost. So 1/3 of the general administrator cost, so there's some differences there. And I will do some research, and I can provide further information to the board, like exact categories, how we can compare apple to apple, those items.
I just wanted to mention that I think certainly for the community, we want to be as transparent as possible. And going forward in 2020, when we'll be asking for a parcel tax, I think the community needs to understand as clearly as possible why we're asking and where we're at in terms of the district finances. So in terms of being transparent, one thing that kind of popped out to me was, and this just came because of the questions that were asked and then the answers, that the general administration costs, board and superintendent, district 3% versus the state at 1%. So I'm wondering if come August, we could have a clearer picture of what that looks like, so that we can, be real clear about what are those costs. Do we need all those costs? And address that for sure.
Clementina, that is actually the category that I referred to, that is including some legal costs that I think would be better categorized elsewhere in the budget. So I believe that was where I saw a $450,000 legal expense that I do not think is properly designated there.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need more research. We need a deep dive on this that I think we'll be able to receive in August or September.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment.
Good evening. I just wanted to say that these cuts to the district office that have been made in the past year or so is kind of putting us back to where we were in 2012 and 2013, when our enrollment was about 3,800. And so we did a comparison when I first came on as president, because we saw how the district office staff had grown from 2012 to 2016. And so now I'm seeing we're going back to where we were staffing-wise in 2012. And so I'm happy to see that. We've been asking for some reconsideration of positions that have opened up. So I'm glad to see that we're kind of going back to where we were. In 2012, our enrollment was 3,800, and now our enrollment latest was 3,562. The other thing is, I just want to ask, since there is going to be that 2.0 FTE reduction at the elementary level, how is the board going to be monitoring the class sizes in the elementary schools to make sure that they don't creep up to, I would say what is in our contract is not an acceptable level for an elementary classroom, K-3. So I just want to, there have been assurances that they would not, we would not go above an average of 24, and I just want to make sure that that is monitored as we go into the new school year. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of Ms. Fujiwara's question, I think that monitoring is something that's going to happen really in September, because we not only get enrollment in July, we get enrollment in August and in September, especially in University Village. And so the class sizes won't, our new superintendent, Dr. Frank Wells, will be working carefully with enrollment and trying to place those late arrivals appropriately. And we won't really know till then what's happening.
It would be helpful, even though we don't know what's happening, I mean, even though we won't have certainty until September. I shouldn't say we won't know what's happening, sounds terrible, but that it would be still helpful, I think, as part of when Superintendent Wells takes over and presumably does a similar sort of weekly update. I think it would be helpful to include in that a report on where we are. We know we have a clearer commitment for kindergarten, so that should be easier to report on. And then also for the other grades, you know, we have a sense of how many classes we have already, even though we don't know the size of those classes for some time. So I think incorporating it into that and then having a more formal report when numbers settle down in September would be helpful.
Dr. Wells did say he was watching this board meeting from where he's at.
That sounds like a board request.
Yes.
And I think that we should ask to get a weekly update in August, maybe through mid-September, even later if things continue to change. And with that, I would like to ask for a motion on the budget.
I move that we approve the 2019-2020 budget as has been presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that brings us to item number M4, Resolution 2018-19-18, Education Protection Account Financial Summary.
So this item is required by the state annually to approve this resolution. And the EPA funds for 1920 are estimated to be about $5,381,000, and I apologize for the typo there that I have it 1819, but under detail it should have been 1920. On the detail, right there, it should have been 1920, because it's for the new year budget. And it is annual requirement by the state that we have this resolution by the board.
So it's the resolution number that's not correct? Okay.
No, this is the year.
Oh, the year, okay.
The resolution number is correct. It's just the year is for 1920 school year.
We certainly want that federal funds.
Who wants to make that motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 2018-19-18, Education Protection Account.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And okay, and that brings us next to the Academic Calendar Task Force.
Thank you, President Trutain. The purpose of this item is for the Board of Education to provide direction to staff on the creation of an academic calendar task force. This was requested by the board, I believe, at the last board meeting. And so we put in here what the committee, the task force will be doing, and also who would be included on the task force. And I know I did say that a task force should never be more than 12 members. And then Trustee Duran reminded me that my list has 13 members, which is why I was a high school English teacher. However, I think it is very important to at least invite and have representatives also from CSEA and SEIU, because decisions do impact their calendars. So I would like to amend it to have 13 members on the task force.
Student Board Member Mala.
I think the document says 11.
The teachers are...
There are 3 teachers.
Yeah, okay. 3 people.
Yeah. And I did think it was important to have one student school board member on the task force.
As a matter of fact, I know somebody who might be interested.
I would love to.
Any board comment?
I guess I just have a question about the timeline. So if this is an appointed task force, is this timeline mean this is just our goal for when we want them to do stuff? This doesn't mean we'd have to sort of re-inaugurate the whole thing after October 31st, right?
Correct, and this is not
not a committee.
This is not a board-appointed committee, so this is basically, the board asked staff to create the task force, and these are my recommendations on who we should have on there. And so the timelines can move, but usually a task force is a very finite amount of time. We don't want this to linger forever. We want some decisions made.
So how do they go about showing interest? I'm trying to sign some people up in the audience right now.
Oh, we would have to reach out. We'd have to basically reach out to ATA. We would reach out to ATA to, they have a process, I think, that they use. We would do the same thing for CSE and SEIU. We could easily advertise this out to the parent community, either through e-trees, or get the information out there. There's only one CBO, so she has to do it. What are we doing here? So parent community, elementary parent, student, we have that one. Mental health counselor, again, we would reach out to ATA for that one. Yeah.
And in terms of a student survey, I had asked a question about that. It had been commented, well, first that our student representative had actually provided some information about a survey that had been done, and then it was also added that the committee itself could determine whether you felt that another survey for students would be important to do.
If the students would like to take another survey, we would work through our student board members as well.
Does that make sense? Yes.
With that, is there a community comment on this item?
Volunteer.
Enthusiastic.
Thank you for volunteering.
I am volunteering, for the record. But I just want to thank you for listening and for putting it on the agenda. I had a lot of good emails and feedback and follow-up and some great ideas. I really appreciate Ms. Cotton suggesting that I go on an ARIES survey. That's a terrific idea. And yes, I do strongly ask you to please approve this item. And I had the same questions about how a task force is formed. And as a parent, I would love to be a representative. And just my question was, how do I make sure that that's known?
That you're on it? Please email me before 5 o'clock on Friday.
Okay, thank you very much.
I would love to make, Board Member Clark, did you have it?
No, I'm good. Do we have to make a formal motion? I thought it was just for us to discuss it. Or...
No, this is to ask the district to form this task force. And I think that maybe it should be the two of us, because we have really fought long and hard to try to have some calendar innovation. So I would like to move that we, let me see, where is it? That we direct staff to the creation of an academic calendar task force.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Yay.
You're like the next item too, then.
Oh, we have been at this for a long time.
Oh, man. Okay. I'm having to flip back and forth to get back to the agenda, so that's why it's taking me a little while here. That brings us to M6, later start times for Albany High School.
Thank you, President Trutain. I am very happy to bring this item to the board for action. So the purpose is for the Board of Education to approve moving the Albany High School start time to a later start time beginning with the 2021 school year. And with this approval, it comes with the understanding that we would work with ATA on a statement of intent, as changing the start times for HS is a subject of bargaining. And we want the statement of intent to say that in terms of when the board approves this, that we go into the bargaining process with ATA. I'm very happy to bring this to the board for approval.
You guys should do this one, too.
All right.
Oh, wait.
You got comments?
I have comments. I mean, I'm excited about it too, but let's not just assume here. Later start times have shown, to be beneficial for students, and so is this kind of the start to kind of making the later start time something that we see throughout, or?
Ah, good question. So I think we wanted to start with the high school, and then take a look at that, and then potentially move on to the middle school. Later start times, when we look at the research really shows that it is second mostly at the high school where there are the benefits. The research does not indicate so much at the elementary level that you need to have a later start time. This is much more of a middle school to high school, and more high school than middle school.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. On the committee, there was a lot of people there who had done a lot of the research. I'll be honest, I didn't read all of it, and if I did, I don't remember all of it. But from what you're saying, it sounds like, from what I remember, that it's definitely has something to do with their sleeping rhythms or something like that, where it was definitely most beneficial for high school students, and then middle school students, like you say. I get it that when parents have kids in the elementary and at the high school, it was different, but from what I remember, the studies or the evidence doesn't really show that it benefits elementary kids.
I believe that this item will just allow the district to open this discussion with ATA and begin to have negotiations and deep discussions about this. It's not an easy item because, with temporary housing, we have to consider traffic patterns, arrivals, and all of that. But this would direct the district to begin to begin that research with ATA.
I just wanted to add one more thing too. If we do approve this, I thought it was also stating that the board agrees with this, knowing that we can't unilaterally do anything. But I thought it was kind of a statement from the board that we agree with this.
I think it's a strong statement of direction that the board really hopes to see progress in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
All right. I would like to make a motion that we approve the later start time for Albany High School with the negotiations. Statement of intent. And
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now we're doing considering a long string of contracts. Number 7, independent contractor services agreement between AUSD and Dr. Rebecca Schilling.
Thank you, President Trutane. So the next 3 or 4 items are contracts brought forward by our special education department. And I really want to thank Diane Marie, who is actually out of state, who answered a lot of the board questions. But we do have Veronica Michael here if there's any questions on the board. These are contracts for independent contractor service agreement, in this case for a school psychologist.
I did have a question. There are, I don't remember how many, if it was 2 or 3, there were like flat fees. And I wasn't still clear whether, regardless of how many students they assess, there's just this flat fee? Or is it based on so many students?
Ms. Michael, do you have to come up to the microphone, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. From what I understand from Ms. Marie is that there are certain particular assessments that these particular psychologists would administer, and exactly I don't know what, but the payment would be upon completion, so they'd have to finish the workload, and I would have to actually look at the IEPs to know exactly what they were doing. But a typical assessment can take anywhere from 20 to 30 hours, so that's why I think they are just given in flat fees. And so we would make sure that all the assessment, the whole battery would be given before the payment would be made. So I think that's the explanation.
And is that just for one student?
That I'm not sure of. I'd have to research that.
I mean, it says in one of the answer from Diane Marie was that it was for one assessment.
It was, yeah, that was one, that was for one of the
Oh.
psychologists, and I was wondering about the others.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
What I can do is I can reach out to Diane Marie and then get back to you with that particular information. But it seems to me that this is probably just one assessment per independent contractor because of the intense nature of the work and how many hours it takes.
So this is pretty standard fee
Yeah.
for this amount of work?
Yes, yeah. And since they're not district employees, they would be contracted separately and have their own separate rate of pay versus if they were an AUSD psychologist, in which case they would be making their salary and doing their assessments during their workday.
Thank you.
I think that, I suspect that these contracts are being offered now just sort of in a proactive way so that the special education department will be able to immediately have students assessed that are coming into the district. So I think they're just kind of trying to have a stable of psychologists. Oh, wow, that's a stable psychologist ready at the need at the beginning of the year.
Right, have them on deck.
I would appreciate some information at a later date about
Exactly what,
right.
how we're utilizing them.
Yes, thank you.
I can do that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Where it talks about the details, is that just, are there specific IEPs that are reviewed, or?
I assume that it's as President Trutain had mentioned, that we'd have these people on deck for, in the instance of Dr. Schilling, to do the annuals like we discussed earlier in the closed session, which is the annual assessment or the annual progress report, and triennial reports for the IEPs. So depending on what the need is for that particular student in that particular assessment area would determine which ones that we would do.
I cannot confirm or deny what was discussed in the closed session.
Exactly. Monsters, Inc.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if, would the board care to try to act on these contracts, item 7 with Dr. Rebecca Schilling, item 8 with Maya Gundelman, and number 9 with Hannah Acevedo? Are we able to group those in one vote?
I would just recommend that we do handle them individually. It could pretty much quickly, but it'd be good to, for the record.
Do we have a motion for the contract with Rebecca Schilling?
I move that we approve the contract for Rebecca Schilling.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The independent contractor services agreement between Albany Unified School District and psychologist Maya Gundelman.
I move that we approve the contract for Maya Gilterman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the independent contract services between AUSD and Dr. Hannah Acevedo.
Go, Brian.
Oh, Clementine, I was going to let you do that one.
She's choking over here.
I move that we approve the independent contract services between the district and Hannah Acevedo.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and contract 10 has been pulled from the agenda. That moves us to independent contractor service with UC Berkeley History Social Science Project.
I'm going to turn this over to Marie Williams.
Good evening again. So the purpose of this item is for the board to approve an independent contractor agreement with UC Berkeley History Social Science Project. We will work with them during the 2019-2020 school year to provide professional development to our key TK5 teachers in August and also in March around the new History Social Science framework, which was adopted in 2016. The history social science framework does not change the standards that are taught, so it doesn't change the content of history social science standards, but as you see in the background, the framework does identify and define 4 key elements of the discipline that are interwoven throughout the framework. Those are content, inquiry, literacy, and citizenship. One of the questions that was asked, and it was a good one, was around how this training would support providing voice to historically marginalized students, so students of color in particular. And in the response, I did indicate that there is an entire chapter in the framework called Access and Equity that deals with specifically supporting the needs of traditionally underserved students through the implementation of this framework. So it students who are identified as English learners, students who are identified as economically disadvantaged, students of color, and other student groups are called out specifically. So I feel very confident that this work really will support us at TK through 5 to really hone in on and focus in on providing culturally responsive teaching to students, because we're not, sometimes when we are providing professional development, we're dealing with content area. So we're dealing with, let's say, reading curriculum, or we're dealing with writing curriculum. So then the focus of the professional development is the content itself. What I think is different about this work that we are embarking on with UC Berkeley is that because the content isn't changing, we're actually sort of switching the focus and thinking about how we are really working to support students. So students really become the center of the professional development, as opposed to, let's say, particular standards in some typical professional development that we would provide. The other part of this contract would allow for there to be some ongoing cohort work with a small group of elementary teachers throughout the year to work on building units, designing essential questions. So taking the learning from August and then really sort of continuing that learning process through March, and then bringing that back at our March PD Day to share with teachers. There's been much conversation sort of in lots of different contexts and venues about history, social science, about the quality of the textbooks, about the quality of the content, about sort of the age of the books, about how responsive the content is. And so I believe that embarking on this relationship with UC Berkeley will help us to begin to address some of those questions and concerns that have come forward in lots of different ways, venues, and contexts.
I'm glad you're so optimistic. I don't feel quite the same. I mean, I'm a little concerned about UC Berkeley in this area, and I wanted to see if you as assistant superintendent would be on it, really looking over their shoulders to be sure that in fact they're addressing this issue. That because the way I read it and I looked at some of their work, it was hard for me to see other than something about community. And I had mentioned in the question that that's such a broad phrase, and how do you really pull in from the diverse student population that we have here in Albany. So I just want to be really, I mean, I think this is a great opportunity, but just that we are really vigilant to be sure that issues, history, impact on marginalized students, as you call them, that will be an issue that is up front and center with them.
I'll say 4 things in response to that. So the first question that you sort of asked was around, would I be watching over their shoulder? So as a practice, I do always attend the professional development that occurs throughout the year in the big PD days, and also any ongoing work that happens. So I would physically be present at these professional developments and would be happy to provide a report to the board about how things are going. The second thing I would say is that the the skeleton for this professional development was designed in collaboration between myself and the History Social Science Project coordinator. So if we as a district felt that there were some pieces that were missing that needed to be added, certainly we would be in a position to be able to do that. You know, if we felt like sort of there were some specific areas of foci that we wanted to dig into. The third thing I think I would say is that we in Albany are, in terms of exploring the framework in a formal manner at TK5, are just a couple years behind the adoption of the framework, which was came about in 2016, and we're about to embark on 1920. And so I don't see this as a one-year-only project. I see this as a project where we begin by providing some overview of the framework, and then as the years move forward, we continue this work. And I think that that sort of therein lies the opportunity, I think, to really go deeper as we sort of build sort of a general understanding with teachers of this new framework and what it is seeking to do to support students in their learning of history, social science. And then the fourth thing I would say is that a couple years ago when I met first with a representative from the UC Berkeley History Social Science Project, they were very well aware of us in Albany, and they were very well aware of the struggles that we were experiencing in terms of the incident that happened at the high school, and were very excited to engage with us in that work. And so I think they're very sensitive to sort of our needs of as a district. I think that they are, you know, sort of looking to issues specifically around equity and social justice. At that time, we didn't enter into a contract with them. But for me, this relationship has been one that I have been hoping to foster for at least the last couple of years. And so I feel very confident that the work that they're going to do and that the relationship that we're going to build is going to be a positive one that endures over some number of years. So thank you for your trust in me.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Would it be possible for one of us to receive like some type of kind of information from the session, or if we could sit in on one of the sessions? I mean, I'm just kind of just interested in like the work that's really going to happen. I mean, you always give great information, and when you're done talking about something, I'm usually really excited to go for it. But I'm just kind of excited, interested about the session, and wondering how we could, you know, be more involved with it.
I would say that I think it would be wonderful to have members of the board participate in the professional development days that are happening throughout the district in August and in March and also in October, and would be happy to send you an invitation. And I would maybe sort of look to the superintendent and make sure that in giving that invitation, I wasn't violating some protocol. So I will ultimately defer to Superintendent Williams, but I'll send you the date so you can put them on your calendar.
Yep, I would recommend that too, even though the board could probably say they're not discussing district business, because it is district business, I would ask that 2 members of the board would attend.
That sounds like a great idea. Now, we've got a really interested and engaged board, and thank you for that invitation. I also wanted to go back to the framework that you talked about, the history social science framework. I think is something that our community has really been, you know, asking for. You know, we've heard a lot of speakers talk about these issues, and being able to move forward with action in this particular area is very exciting. I wanted to just read this little bit because I felt it was powerful. Students may possess multiple cultural identities based on their gender, sexual orientation, class, race, ethnicity, religion, and disabilities. Culturally competent teachers respect differences, are aware of their own cultural identity and unconscious biases, and adapt their instruction accordingly. To ensure that all students thrive in history, social science classrooms, teachers should adopt an additive stance toward the culture and language of their students by following 4 principles: exude a positive disposition, recognize cultural and experiential backgrounds, address language status, and support the development of academic English. So I'm happy with that to ask the board if they're ready to make a motion on this contract.
I move we approve the independent contractor services agreement with UC Berkeley History Social Science Project.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh.
Not too enthusiastically, but aye. Sorry.
And that brings us to item 12, the independent contractor service agreement with Candice Valenzuela, Candice Rose Consulting.
So the purpose of this item is to approve a contract with Candice Valenzuela, who will provide ongoing professional development at Albany Middle School. You see here in the background that Candice visited with Albany Middle School at the March PD Day, and I will quote the principal, Deb Brill, who said, "It was the best professional development we've ever had." And so when there was an opportunity that presented itself for Albany Middle School to continue to work with Candice Valenzuela, I was very eager to bring this contract forward so that this work can begin at the August PD Day. And you'll see in terms of sort of the scope of work that there would be some ongoing work with Candice and the site. And so there's some information provided here regarding Ms. Valenzuela's credentials, and then also sort of just some general information about the outcomes, the intended outcomes of their professional development in terms of enhancing school culture change toward restorative, non-punitive, and equitable pedagogies that sustain teachers, staff, and students. So again, really excited to bring forward a contract that really addresses in a deep and meaningful and sustained way culturally responsive practice to support all of our learners. And so if there are any questions, I would entertain them. The only board question was a comment, and it was, "This looks exciting, can I attend?" And the answer, I think, would be the same. As for the previous item, I'll be happy to send you the dates.
Go ahead, Board Member Clark.
Does anybody have a question? I was going to make the motion, but okay. Yeah. So I'll make a motion that we approve the independent contractor services agreement with Candice Valenzuela, Candice Rose Consulting for professional development at Albany Middle School.
I would like to second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have an agreement with Yasso Group, Specified Play Equipment Company.
Thank you, President Chutane, members of the board. This is my item. As we look to having elementary students at the Albany Middle School Annex, Principal Terry Georgeson has been looking for an age-appropriate play structure that could be placed there. This play structure would stay there even while Marin had their students at the Annex. I do want to add that after this board packet and contract was posted, Terry Georgeson found another play structure with the same company that she feels is more appropriate. It is a little bit more expensive. It's about $5,000 more. And so she is here to answer any questions if you have any. I will tell you, I did not know what it took to research to choose an age-appropriate play structure and meet all of the guidelines that goes with it. And for Terry to do this and then sort of at the 10th hour find something that she thought was better, is a little bit more expensive, to bring this to the board. What I'm asking the board is that they that you give me a little bit of leeway to let Terry work with this company to see if she can get this other play structure, and she can tell you a little bit more about it if you would like to hear. So Terry, can you come to the dais, please, and tell us why you like this other play structure, please?
Good evening, and hello, board, and Superintendent Val Williams. What I'd like to do is, if you guys don't mind, while I talk a little bit about it, I have some pictures of it, because play structures are easier to talk about if there's a visual. So I have one for, I believe, everybody there. If I may just start by saying the deadline to be able to give you a contract that I could get out here now so that hopefully by the first part of the school year, we could have a play structure in place. We were looking for a certain type, and some of the challenges and the goal that we had was to provide a play structure that offered a safe, easy to supervise, cost value, in other words, low cost to high value, engaging for students, and hopefully multi-stimuli. The requirements of the location, I'm assuming all of you have been to the annex and have noted that that play area that we have for our approximately 160 to 180 first and second graders is narrow and long and not really designed initially. It's designed for middle school students, so it's not really a play area, so we have to kind of make the best of what we've got. So the requirements of the location are limited space. We want multi-use as best we can because a play structure is going to take up some of that space. We want to be able to feel satisfied with it with a minimum of 4-year use and hopefully the ability to take it after we're done at the annex and move it to another location, whether it be at Ocean View, Marin, or I'm even thinking maybe with ACC back behind Ocean View School. And the number of students that can use the structure. So I'm looking for something that can really house and utilize as many students as possible on it. The contract before you meets 2 of those goals. One is cost. It kept our cost within the range we were looking at, and it was timely. We knew we could get it in a timely fashion. The description of the one that you have before you is a little bit more expensive. It's similar. In other words, we were looking at rope climbing type structures. But the one before you not only is rope climbing, but it moves. So if you remember the old type carousel structures that used to be in playgrounds where you would climb on it and someone would be on the side and run as fast as they could and spin it around and around. This one offers the same kind of opportunity, but it has kind of it only goes so fast, so it's not going to go as fast as you can go and spin somebody off of it. This one can hold as many as 25 students on it, and it fits within the small space that we're really trying to utilize. So if you can think of the space over there at the middle school annex, that space right outside the overhang of the outdoor teaching space on the 2nd floor, that is a space that really is limited in what we can provide for students to play there. So our hope is to be able to put a play structure there. This one meets that. The contract before you is a little bit larger base, and it would need to go out into the larger space. So by putting this in the smaller space, we're also allowing more open space because we need to be able to have open space for our PE program. We don't want to impede upon the middle school blacktop or their play area if we can at all avoid it. And by keeping as much open space in that back area, we give our PE teacher a little bit more. So this also helps keep us into that small space. My staff and I looked at this. We talked about the multiple ways in which students can play on this versus the contract in front of you, which is primarily just a climbing structure. With the movement one, it meets more of the developmental needs of kids. It offers a better stimuli for students, and our hope is that you'll allow us to make this little shift in making sure that we can provide the best play structure within the cost that we're trying to stay within.
Thank you, Principal Williamson. Board, you have any questions?
Sounds great. My question is, 2 questions. One is it would cost no more than the $50,000, basically? Okay. And the other question had to do with, I know it says the bond fund, and I'm just wondering whether we're talking about leftover money, if there's such a thing, from middle school project, if it's coming from the Ocean View project?
It would be split between the bond allocation for Ocean View and for Marin, since they're going to be sharing that.
Oh, okay, good, great.
So yeah, I just want to make sure I word this properly, because we can't approve what's in front of us, right? Because she's requesting something different, right? So do we have to, how do we word it, Val?
So what you probably could say is that you're approving the contract.
It looks like it's two different companies, that's why I just want to make sure.
No, it's the same company, right?
It's the same
company.
contractor who works with a
It's
couple
just a-
different companies. So even though the company that makes the play structure the other, it's being brought to us through the same company.
Well, before,
I was going to say, I didn't mean to jump and not let people ask questions, so
Oh.
go ahead.
the only thing I was going to say is that in the instruction, if there can be something that says not to exceed the 50,000.
Sure. So what the board can do is they could say that they approve the agreement with Yoso Group Incorporated, DBA, for the specified play equipment for turnkey installation, blah, 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 but the rest of that, the contract not to exceed $50,000.
Because, I mean, I think that, I mean, it makes perfect sense that you made the adjustment. The kids will have more space. They need more space. It's already really small. But then I don't want you to go home and find one for 55,000 and then come back, so.
Yeah, I know, I wouldn't do that, but I appreciate the
So
question.
then what we would do is, if you approve that, then what we would do is we would just have them drop a new contract and we would sign it. Are you guys okay with that? Or I could,
Anybody else
yeah,
have a question?
okay.
So basically, I'm making a motion for what the item says, not to exceed $50,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agreement with Yoso Group, Inc. for a specified play equipment co. for turnkey installation of one new play structure at Albany Middle School Annex, and the cost not to exceed $50,000.
My second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and now we have independent contractor service agreement with Mercaza.
Thank you, President Churchain, members of the board. When we did the curb striping in front of Albany Middle School, it was not required that we had to add the ADA parking space, because Albany Middle School currently has 2 ADA parking spaces on that side where the, on campus where the portables are. However, I think it's a good idea to add the handicap parking space in front of the middle school for several reasons. One, if people were to park in the handicap space in the back, because we have the portables there, you have students going back and forth throughout the entire school day. Another reason is that people would then park and have to go through the entire campus to get to the main office. It is much easier and by the way, that's also kind of a graded area, so anybody that's in a wheelchair would have to navigate an incline. So I'm recommending that the handicap spot be created in front of Albany Middle School. It makes it much easier for parent drop-off and pickup, or anybody that needs to park who needs to have access. Because we are creating that, we need to make sure that we are up to the latest city code on ADA compliance, which means we will have to do some sidewalk work. So I am making a recommendation that the board approve this, and this is, excuse me, this is bond funded.
I have a question of clarification. So there is a handicap spot in front of Albany Middle School. You said create several times, but really this is just moving the spot that currently exists a few feet and bringing it up to code. Is that correct?
Yes, the moment you move it, you have to bring it up to the new code.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Who were different groups involved in this conversation or this discussion?
I did speak with Principal Brill, as well as, and Juan Barroso has been working with us. We've been having conversations with the city, and the city said it wasn't required. It was their recommendation, and after speaking with Principal Brill, I realized that this is good for the community. It's good for our folks to have the easiest access they can to campus as possible.
Thank you.
I believe that what happened is that when those crosswalks went in, sort of the crosswalks with the bumps along the edges of them and all that, that would have required that impeded the handicap spot by a few feet. And so either we would lose that handicap spot altogether, which would have been legal because we have those other two spots, or we would incur this contract and in order to move to retain that handicap spot directly in front of the school.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So the scope of this, though, seems to include a lot of other things, not just the ADA parking space. There's also signage, moving a tree, restriping some curbs.
Yes.
And some of those were just repainted, right? I guess I'm just trying to understand the full scope of the project. It's not just the ADA space, right?
No, because of the new requirements, you actually have to do the cement work, which means there is a tree that is in the way. So we would have to move the tree. And we have to replace the tree. So what we're finding out is if it's not easy just to move a tree, right? We probably have to replace the tree. And there is the curb and gutter work. And yes, we do need we're gonna have to move the sign. So the sign posting would be there with a very specific times we would have the parent drop off and pick up. And yes, we would need to do the curb striping as well.
And does this sign apply to that whole stretch?
I believe, I had a picture of it, I think. I believe it does. It's for the section that would be, it is for the section for which the curb stripe, the parent drop-off pickup zone would be, the timing of that. And I believe we worked with that with Deborah Brill to find out what was the best amount of time, the best time period to have the drop-off pickup times.
Okay. I guess my larger point is it would be good to know how this fits in the bigger picture of how we've been talking about drop-off issues and challenges at the middle school, and if there's some sort of rethinking to be done about both sides of that whole street, it would be good to incorporate that into this plan. So we're not sort of digging up a tree, putting a new tree, and then in August, we get another agenda item for, well, actually, now we want to move this over here. So I'm just trying to get a sense of.
I'm hoping we won't have to move anything else.
Okay.
And one of the good things about when we were talking about the high school striping was that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any issues around making sure that there was handicap spots, and that wasn't the issue. But I think it's something to be mindful of when we're building Ocean View and Marin, as you start to look at where you want parent drop-off pickup, where you want your handicap zone to be, because the new compliances, you have to do some sidewalk work to have sort of this bulb in so that you can get out of your car in a wheelchair safely and not be in the path of traffic.
Because this seems really important and great. I'm still very concerned about that block of Brighton once school starts, that we're going to have a lot of traffic and pedestrian safety issues as that area becomes more congested, and so it just might be worth making sure that this fits in with whatever else we might want to do in the future to get that into a better place.
Based on that, Sarah, I'm just wondering what might be required, or what, who would look ahead to that, and who would they talk to regarding what would be the best step going forward?
I mean, I think those conversations have been happening in different venues, including traffic and safety, with the repainting that's already been done along San Gabriel and around the corner of the annex. But as far as I know, there's been no decision made about the part of Brighton that's sort of pre-existing and not adjacent to the annex.
Right. It's further down, right?
Yeah. So I think some of those conversations have been happening. Maybe what you could do is just make sure that there's a connection between whatever other conversations the city and traffic and safety are having about potential ways to mitigate the hazard along that block of Brighton when we add 160 to 180 students, especially around pickup time.
I think one thing that we can do is the way that we're going to request weekly enrollment updates is that we can ask our superintendent to really scrutinize what's happening. You know, it's our first year of temporary housing, and there's going to be a lot going on, you know, even on Masonic and you know, in different areas. And so I think that we need to request that we keep a really close eye on what's happening, which will probably involve reports from the principals. And then when we see what the trouble spots are, we'll have to you know, get advice on appropriate action. Yeah.
Are we even thinking about volunteers from the community to sort of be out there as, and I don't mean officially as crossing guards, but certainly in the way of, you know, adults out there and checking out the cars and if everybody's parked appropriately as opposed to just...
I know that there's always a principal or an assistant principal on Brighton in for drop-off and for pickup. In terms of using PTA as volunteers to help with traffic issues, I know that at Ocean View, that used to be a PTA project, and but it hasn't in the past several years. I think probably that dropped out maybe like 6 years ago. Principal Jorgensen might be able to share some insight about, you know, the ups and downs of using PTA volunteers for that type of work. Would you have any comments on that, Terry?
You're correct. Several years ago, I did have a couple parents who came forward and wanted to kind of help up with the, particularly the drop-off right there in the parking lot area. And our experience was two-part. One, it was really nice to have parents out there with parents. They weren't always received as friendly as you would hope. So what that taught us was a little bit of training would probably be good. We've had some conversations with the walk and roll group, and our hope is to try to get them involved once we kind of see what the issues are. Part of it is we have an understanding of what the traffic is going to be, but we really want to see kind of what the flow is. And my goal this summer is to just get some information out to parents around what are some of their options of parking and walking and the different drop-off and pickup times. Probably the biggest advantage we have is that we have 2 starting times and 2 ending times. So the crowd that would be coming, the 160 to 180 students, doesn't all come at one time and they don't all leave at one time. And then with our current start times, we kind of stagger with the middle school. So the traffic will be there. It'll be crowded, but it's not going to all funnel into one starting time. The downside is it's going to be crowded for a little bit longer period of time. So parent volunteers, I think, are a great idea. And working with some organizations around training is what's going to be really helpful.
Thank you. So I would like to move we approve the independent contractor services agreement with Mercosa for curb striping, signage, and construction of 1 new ADA parking space at Albany Middle School.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now we're at item 15 out of 19, but I do think we're going to need to ask for an extension. We were scheduled to end at 9:45, and I think it's going to take us maybe to 10.
I move that we extend the meeting to 10 p.m.
Second.
I think that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
All in favor? Thank you. We can make it.
We can make it.
We can make it.
We can make
Okay.
it.
Item 15, United Fence Services.
Thank you, President Giudice, members of the board. I am bringing this item with the kindergartners going to Cornell and Marin. Cornell right now will need to use that front of school play area. Currently, there is a sort of a blue wall that goes around, and pretty much anybody can hop over the wall. So for student safety, and actually I think this will benefit the community as well, we'd like to put a fence on top of that, and I was assured that we can actually put it on top of the blue fence. So it's going to be probably a 3-foot fence, and it'll go all the way around, and then it'll allow us to take that small gate out and put a full-size, what they call the panic gate, that would actually, so it can be locked. So it would allow more security. We could work and make sure that maybe it's remained unlocked during the weekend so the community can still use it. So I'm recommending that the board approve the agreement with United Fence Service for the installation of this perimeter fence.
I move that we approve the agreement with United Fence Services for installation of perimeter fencing at kindergarten play area at Cornell Elementary School.
Second.
Just a quick question. Was the principal from Cornell involved in this discussion?
Yes, the principal of Cornell, the principal of Ocean View was also in part of this.
So there's a motion on the floor. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And now, item number 16, the piggyback contract with D&D Security Resources for 21st Century Furniture.
Yes, thank you. This is also my item. This is for the elementary classrooms at Albany Middle School that Terry needs for her students who are going to be there.
So will we be able to move this furniture to Ocean View when we're done?
Yes.
Okay. I move we approve the piggyback contract with D&D Security Resources for 21st Century Furniture.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I did want to make a comment. So the Ocean View final meeting for the new design happened earlier today. And I just got a peek at the furniture they had chosen for the library, and it's really neat stuff. It's some of the chairs are made out of recycled ocean plastic, and they look really kid-friendly, and it's a very fresh new look what they're doing, and they've really taken a lot of time to work with the teachers and the librarian, of course, Ray, about exactly what kind of feeling they want and how kid-friendly and focused on the lower levels, 0 to 4 feet in terms of the kids' experience in the library. So I'm thinking that all of this new furniture that we're going to get is going to be a big improvement. And with that, we will move to the agreement with Donald Urfer and Associates for structural assessment of retaining wall at Marin Elementary School.
What's that?
Did I miss something?
We haven't.
Oh, did we not vote? We did.
You did vote.
I think we did. I think she started talking
And
after.
then I.
It was second.
We didn't change anything.
Right. No, it was just a
Oh,
comment.
okay.
Yeah, it was just a comment. Yeah. Okay, so we're moving on to Donald Urfer and
We voted.
structural assessment of retaining wall.
Okay, thank you. This is part of the planning for Marin Elementary School, and we need to undertake an assessment of the existing retaining wall along Curtis Street. This is to inform the project team in regards to the wall's current structural integrity, and if we need to make any kind of repairs and look at the impact.
This is the one that's 7,000.
That is $7,500. So this is this is time and materials basis. So they're going to be visually inspecting the wall conditions. They're going to look at the preliminary drawings of the original when the wall was built. So we need to look and make sure that check the structural integrity of that wall as the design team moves forward.
Yeah, because there's like a long crack
There's some crackage.
in the, Tamara knows, she sees it every day like I do, so. I'm good with this one, because I feel like they're gonna look at that wall and say.
Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, I can't do it. Somebody's gotta do it.
I move that we approve the agreement with Donald C. Urfer and Associate Inc. for structural assessment of retaining wall, of the retaining wall at Marin Elementary.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now we have independent contractor services agreement with Alana Buick and Burrs for investigation of water intrusion at Albany High School.
You skipped.
gym.
Nope, I'm sorry, we're on agreement with United Fence Service for installation of new neighbor fence.
Sorry, I
That-
jumped ahead.
that's okay.
Yes, we're at the United Fence Services for installation of a new neighbor fence.
Thank you. So the board previously approved the construction of the fence along the east side of the MS Annex. It was a 12-foot fence. This is using the fence company for the south side. And I actually am very happy to bring this forward because I had the chance to meet the person who lives at the house on the south side and to converse with her, not in an email, but actually meet with her and walk the fence with her. She does not want the 12-foot wooden fence. She likes her chain link fence. She has really nice foliage that's growing on it. What she has asked for is there's a section that needs to have those privacy slats put in, but she's also asking for an extension on the height for a certain section because when you go to the second floor, it looks right into a bathroom. And so this actually saves the district some money rather than building that whole fence. So this is for the extension of that fencing, and she's happy with this.
Well, on that note, I am happy to give this neighbor what she really wants to maintain her privacy and to keep the chain link there and just, I think, raise it up a little bit and provide some privacy slats. So I will move that we approve the independent contract services agreement with United Fence Services for installation of the new neighbor fence on the south side of the Albany Middle School Annex.
Just so you said, just for clarity, you said this saves the district some money, but we're actually approving spending more money.
Well, we are, but what we would have brought to the board was not only the fencing, the 12-foot fence along the east side, but we would have brought the 12-foot fencing along the south side, which would have been substantially more money. So we didn't bring that because she wants to keep the initial fencing.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And that brings us to our last contract, the Alana Buick and Bears for investigation of water intrusion at Albany High School gym.
I'm going to turn this over to Jackie Kim.
Thank you. This item is to approve the agreement with this company for the investigation of the water intrusion. Over past years, we have several incidents of the high school gymnasium floor gets swollen up. So this has been about, for me, I know last year about 3 times that we have to send vendors to see it, and we just couldn't identify the problem of the water, where the water leads to this swelling up the floors. So this is something that we really want to address and want to fix it.
There was a board question that I think bears asking and responding to, and that was, how do we know when the company does this testing that they will find, where the water intrusion is? So I did have a conversation with Juan Barroso and asked him. So he says it's clear that there is water intrusion. He says this company specializes in doing this work. And so what they do is they will come in and They'll do the testing, they'll determine where the water is coming from, and then will give us the best course of action. I think what we don't want to do is to keep sort of guessing as, is it coming in during the rainy season? Is it coming up through, because the water table is higher during the wintertime, is it seeping up? Is it something that is, going through the roof and into the walls? That this company will be able to help us really finally determine what is the actual root cause of the problem so that we can address it. We don't want to keep having this issue where it keeps buckling and then we have to repair it, and then it keeps buckling and we have to keep repairing it.
So,
Go ahead.
two things. So once they complete this, then is there a plan in place either to like redo the high school gym floor, or it's really slippery right now. Like it's really, really slippery.
That's a good question, and I do not know the answer to that question.
So I think that's a different item. The slippery part, our custodian department will do annual work during the summer. However, this work, I believe we will just fix that part of the swollen up part, about 2 feet wide and 40 feet long. Because when this gets swollen up, we couldn't pull up our bleachers. Even for graduation, I was really worried. So what we did is we have to cut off the floors and let the air goes out, and it works. Okay, now we will be safe for maybe a few more days. And we put it together. So that has been an issue. And for the gym flooring, about slippery, that is something that our custodian and maintenance team does annual work. So that will be addressed as well this summer. So it's two different things, but I think this part of the floor is just one of the portion on the southern side of the gym.
I think if I can add to that, one of the things we had talked earlier about this, I believe, is that we might want to revisit how often we sort of re-wax or resurface that floor, right? So, because it gets used all year round. And so it would be worth looking to see how much activity that floor gets, and should we build in sort of a semi-annual I don't know what you call it, waxing or redoing the floors, and try to see if you can balance that between the winter sports, the spring sports, the fall sports that are on that gym. Because right now it's just an annual, and I think you're talking about what happens is after a while it gets kind of slippery.
Right. Yeah.
It might be worth looking at to see if we can do this on a semi-annual basis.
Yeah.
My question has to do with the question that was asked earlier. I think everybody's on the same page as that we need to find the cause for this and solve the problem at its core. But the athletic director can tell you, who has been here for many years, that the floor buckles up after there's been a really heavy rain. So she knows this, and this is like the third time that we've gotten warranty repair on this floor, and so she is very familiar with the pattern, and it's not going to be a problem now because it hasn't rained in a while. And so I think that even though this might be a great company and they might be really good at finding the issue, I'm very worried that if this work takes place over the summer, that exactly what the board member that asked this question postulated is going to happen. They're probably going to come in and they're going to do a bunch of testing, and they're going to say, there's no problem right now. You're going to have to bring us back, after there's been a big rain, and then we can figure it out. Because it's not constant. It happens seasonally. So with that, I think that the district ought to discuss that with the information we have about when these instances have happened, and talk to the Alana, Buick, and Bears about whether they think, given the evidence, whether it would be worthwhile to go ahead and come out this summer, or if they think there's a high likelihood that they would have to come out again in the rainy season, because I don't want to see two bills.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So what we could do is, even if the board approves this tonight, is not execute the actual work until we have that conversation. Because they might say, you're right, it might be the best way to do it is this next winter. or it might be in the fall, and watch, we'll have a drought year.
But if we approve it now, and then they say, no, we got to look at it right now, because maybe they just want to get paid now like most businesses, then what you're saying wouldn't happen. Like, they would just do it. I think we should bring this back when it's time for, when the rain starts, and then approve it then.
You said it was buckled as recently as 10 days ago, or a week ago. with
About a month
graduation.
ago, I believe, about a month ago. Right.
Did it rain about a month ago?
I think there was something.
Yeah, there was that late rains. There were, remember, it was right before the, before that heat wave before graduation.
Right.
You know, I think we probably could table this. I wonder if we could, do you think we could table
We
it?
could table this and then have this
information from-
conversation. You know, and I would say, please do involve the people at the high school who've noted exactly when the buckling has happened, and discuss it with this firm and see what they have to say.
We have Juan talk to the firm as well. Yeah.
Or we can approve this contract and we can schedule later time after we talk to Juan, because this is something that Juan recommended, but we can speak to Juan again and see what is the best time for this company to come and do the investigation. So at least we have a room to schedule this. I certainly do not want to see the bid again, and right.
So I guess my follow-on question would be then, you know, whether Juan has talked to the people at the high school who've been there for each of these 3 incidents, and whether he's aware of the correlation with the heavy rain.
Yes, we do. And I actually am aware of that as well. So our maintenance crew also did some work. For example, we tried to seal some of the walls with the waterproof paint, and it didn't work. And our maintenance staff tried a few things, because whenever it rains, this floor, and actually, I have to say, our maintenance and custodian staff are the one who really knows, because they live there every day. So they are the one who brought this to my attention. Whenever there is a rain, our floor swollen up. So we do know that's the problem, the water leaks, but we don't know if that is from outside or from the gutter or from the windows, maybe observe the water. We just don't know where that leads to it, but we know it's something got to do with rain and water, right?
Okay, so I'm looking at page 700 and, sorry, give me a second. Page 758. So under number 2, it says terms. Contractor shall commence providing services under this agreement on the date contained in the project notice to proceed. And it says no extension of the term of this agreement. So we would need to look at the notice. We'd have the notice to proceed is what we would need to look at. You know, Vice President Doss, I'm looking to see if I can find the notice to proceed, if it's in here. If the no, it's not in here. Scope of work. I'm down on page 764. Okay, so I don't see the notice to proceed. So, Vice President Doss, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think my recommendation is that we table this. We can always bring it back in August if need be, so that we can have a confirmed when the notice to proceed is, because we don't want to have them start something and then the timeline ends and then we can't amendment. I would rather, let's hold back a little bit and bring this back. But you would have to make the motion second to table.
I would like to motion that we table this item.
I second. Oh, all right. No, you beat me to it.
I second that. All in favor of tabling this item to a future date?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Wow. It was a whirlwind.
President
And I back.
Tain, can I ask one question? It was number 10 that was pulled, and I was just wondering why, since it's a special ed, it was to have a special ed teacher. Is that
Yes.
no longer needed?
No, it was pulled because when you look in the contract, there were two numbers. One was a $500 and something number per day, and earlier in the contract, there was another number. And so I want to make sure that either those two numbers are correct because they're for different services, or I want to make sure that it wasn't a typo. So we can, because Veronica Michaels said that this is a school year start, that we could actually bring this back to the board in August.
And that brings us to agenda items introduced by the board.
M10, which is that, and then to bring back the independent service for the investigation of water intrusion, we can bring that back in August as well.
And with that, this last meeting of the 2018-19 school year is adjourned.
Yay!